I'm Patti Kirkpatrick.
And I'm Kent Dana. This is Action News Tonight. Arizona is now number 10, the 10th state to report a case of contaminated Gerber baby food. This woman, Margaret Rubio of El Mirage, claims she found particles of glass in a jar of Gerber's bananas with tapioca that she was feeding to her 2-month-old son. State health department officials tested other jars from the same store and found no more glass. But test results from the Food and Drug Administration are still to come.
It has been identified as glass by the El Mirage Police Department at this point. We will send it to our lab for final determination.
And are we looking at product tampering?
There is always that potential, and so we have to take that into consideration.
But Peak added that it's much more likely that the jars were simply jostled and broken during shipping. Meanwhile, Maryland has become the first state to ban the sale of a Gerber product. Strained peaches were pulled from the shelves after glass was found in 2 jars.
The ill-fated launch of the Challenger was ordered even though tests a year ago showed that rocket seals might fail in cold weather. That's tonight from the magazine called Aviation Week in Space Technology. Beginning in 1982, NASA conducted wind tunnel tests at Texas A&M University. The study showed that cold wind blowing across the super-chilled shuttle liquid fuel tank could freeze the solid rocket booster and cause a stiffening of the rubber-like seals. Well, it was a bitterly cold morning at Cape Canaveral before Challenger's launch, and the engineers who built the rocket boosters knew the O-ring seals on the rockets could be damaged by the cold. Well, because of that, Morton Thiokol's Alan McDonald, the top company official at the Cape, denied the company's permission to launch. But on the night before launch, NASA's Lawrence Molley allegedly pressured the company until Vice President Joe Kilminster sent his approval, while the engineers and McDonald continued to object. Meantime, a European rocket seen as a prime competitor to the space shuttle tonight launched 2 satellites into space. The European Space Agency launched its Ariane rocket successfully from South America.
One person was slightly injured today during the evacuation of a USAir DC-9 at the Erie, Pennsylvania airport. The plane, with 23 people aboard, skidded off the snow-covered runway and wound up straddling a road leading to the airport. The plane was on a flight from Toronto. According to USAir, the airport tower had informed the pilot that landing conditions were good.
Eastern Airlines pilots say they know a strike may mean the end of their jobs, but they say they've decided to walk out next week if contract talks are not successful. Union leaders say they're still a long way from settlement. And the long and sometimes violent strike by copper unions against Phelps Dodge is over now. The National Labor Relations Board has upheld the decertification vote in which Phelps Dodge workers decided against letting the union represent them.
2-time artificial heart patient Bernadette Chayrez underwent kidney dialysis in Tucson again today. Despite her continuing kidney problems, doctors at the University Medical Center say the Phoenix mother is making gradual improvements and seems more alert tonight. Ryan White's return to school was a short one. The 14-year-old Indiana AIDS patient was in class today for the first time in more than a year. But he was back in court after school, where a judge issued a temporary restraining order barring Ryan from class. An attorney filed a request for a local parents group that contends Ryan shouldn't be allowed in class because he has a communicable disease.
This is Action News Tonight with Kent Dana and Patti Kirkpatrick.
And coming up, our future quest slips the bonds of Earth to examine tomorrow in space. It's never safe to look into the future with eyes of fear. A philosopher said that long ago, but it really applies now more than ever. Tonight, the documentary unit and I conclude our future quest with forecasts that may seem bold, even frightening. A future where our children have to live in space and with bodies more synthetic than human.
The prosthetic device technology is getting better, mainly because of microelectronics, and that will increase up to the point where you can actually regenerate limbs, and medically they're working on that very, very, very hard.
If unlocking the secrets of our own molecules will let us grow back lost limbs, what about cloning the entire body?
Having a duplicate of yourself, for instance, maybe semi-conscious in a tank for parts replacement. I mean, it sounds very morbid, but it makes very good sense medically.
Another amazing medical breakthrough might come sooner than you think.
Many of the people alive right now may live for 200, 300, 400 years. Once we understand how bodies age, chances are excellent that we'll be able to change that and actually reverse the aging process, perhaps.
But if so many of us will be living so much longer, where in the world will we all live and work and eat?
A new life awaits you in the off-world colony.
We can, if we wish, begin to export people to the moon to take up residence.
I could imagine in 30 years that we might have a lunar base permanently. The reason we would want to have a lunar base would be to mine the natural resources on the moon.
We go into space, we can get asteroids. There's an infinite supply of basic material. We're just now starting to do our homework on building the space station. We'll certainly have space worlds, space cities. There's an estimate that by the year 3000, there'll be more people living off the planet than are living on the planet.
I think that in the 21st century, you're going to see human beings moving out into the universe in a big way.
So people who are young children right now will be the astronauts of the future.
As we close out this series of reports, we'd like to thank designer and futurist Sid Mead for lending us some of his artwork to visualize many of these futuristic ideas. And in the course of this project, we learned that the title, Future Quest, is also the name of a science fiction activities club right here in the Valley, one of several private organizations whose main purpose is gazing into the future.
Patti, you've been looking at several aspects of living in the future. What was the most surprising thing that you found out?
Well, one of the most surprising and perhaps unnerving things that I discovered was how few people are thinking ahead and planning for our future.
Most people must be more worried about next year or next week even.
Tomorrow.
Okay. And more down to earth tonight. The Dow Jones Industrials were up nearly 25 points by today's final bell to close out the week with another record high. As many as 26,000 Northern California residents are spending another night away from home. Floodwaters from a ruptured levee submerged 28 square miles around Yuba County tonight. The sheriff's office says there's no telling how long these people will have to stay there. Luckily, everyone was evacuated safely. There were no injuries.
California's going to be a long time recovering from those storms. Meantime, we've got a weekend coming up that we're going to look back on in August and say, remember that great February weekend we had?
This is gloating weather. This is one where you pick up the telephone and go, ha, 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 we're by the pool, and you wouldn't really. And the place to call would be back in the Northeast because they have some really rotten weather going on there now. Now a look at our good weather. Nice clear skies over the valley tonight. 64 degrees last hour at Sky Harbor, 33% for the humidity, dew point low at 34, and the barometer is steady. Our high today in the valley topped out at 75 degrees. This morning's low, a cool 48. We had 58 degrees yesterday morning, but we lost the clouds, and so we lost a lot of that heat that the clouds hold in. Still way above normal for this time of the year. As far as air quality goes, things were not all that bad in the air quality category. Particulates and carbon monoxide just barely poking their heads into the moderate category. Ozone in the good range. Satellite photo from tonight of the southwest shows nice, clear skies, and it will be a clear night. That means a cool night. Overnight lows dropping down to the mid-range of the 40s in through the valley. Up north should be seeing temperatures in through the 30s, but most of the folks should be around the freezing mark up north. Out west, though, they still have some clouds. In fact, on the large western view, you can see the clouds beginning to move into northern California and through parts of the Pacific Northwest. It's snow at the higher elevations, rain down along the coastal areas. Fortunately, most of this is falling in areas that weren't really that hardly hit the early part of the week when the storms came through. This particular storm will kind of ride up and then drop down and through parts of the Central Plains. The storm you see behind it will ride up right behind it and actually track just a little bit farther to the north, and that should be good news for the folks out in through parts of California. As far as radar goes this evening, out west, you can see once again they're getting rain and snow. It's snow up the higher elevations. Fortunately, the heaviest amounts are falling in through parts of Oregon, which was spared earlier in the week. Scattered snow across the northern Rockies, some scattered snow in through the north central plains states, seeing about an inch of rain. But out in the east, it's a flat mess. You can see some of the precip just moving off the east coast. Earlier in the evening, this mess of a storm has created everything from rain all the way to snow. Along with that, some ice mixed in. A frontal system has been passing through, and it was rain right along the coastline. The farther inland you went, it started to turn into snow and all that driving problem. Snowfall amounts into 1 to 3 inch category range, and rainfall amounts less than 1/4 of an inch. As far as warm weather goes down south, the warmth that was yesterday in through parts of the deep south has moved over into the southeastern United States. Afternoon.